Hello everybody, welcome into another lesson. So today we are going to find specific values between numbers. So what do I mean by that? Say you're given a problem of find the number halfway between A and B. So you have some arbitrary number A and then another number B. You're being asked to find the number halfway between them. You may even be asked to find the number a third of the way between them, a quarter of the way between them, 3/4 of the way between them. Well, there is a formula for that. What you're going to do is take the first number A plus, in this particular case, since it's halfway between the numbers, 1/2 times the second number minus the first number, okay? Now, had they asked you to find the number a third of the way between them, instead of a half, you would have a third times b minus a. That fraction's always going to be the number it is between a and b, between your two numbers. And I wrote the formula at the top left so we have it to refer to. So, let's get started with our very first problem. What would be the first one? Okay. So the first problem here, they're asking us to find the number that lies halfway between 5/9 and 4/7. So what we got to do now is you're going to take your first number of 5/9, and since it's halfway, it's going to be plus 1/2 times your second number of 4/7 minus 5/9, your first number. So that's the equation set up, and now it should just be some basic math. Well, we'll still have 5/9 plus 1/2 times what's inside. Let's see, our least common denominator of 7 and 9 is going to be 63. So multiply 4 by 9, you'll get 36 over 63 minus, alright, we got to multiply 5 by 7, you'll get 35 over 63. So that's what we have going on inside the parentheses, which now should give you 5/9 plus 1/2 times 1/63. That's what you would get. Which would end up equaling 5/9 plus 1/126. So what you have now is 5/9 plus 1/126. We got to figure out how many times 9. Let's see if 9's a least common multiple. Let's see if 9's a common factor of 126. Yeah, alright, 9 goes into 126 14 times. So we'd have to multiply both numerator and denominator by 14 to get the same denominator. You multiply 5 by 14, you'll get 70 over 126. Plus you'll have that 1 over 126. Then to add all these together, you'll just get 71 over 126. And that would be all you could do. They factor no further, so the number that rests halfway between 5/9 and 4/7 is going to be 71 126. And that would in fact be your answer. So, and if you want to check, take the decimal values of each of these fractions, and you would find that 71 126 does in fact lie between 5/9 and 4/7. I know it just doesn't look like it, but it does. Alright, let's figure out what the next numbers are. What if this time they wanted you to find the number halfway between 7/11 and 3/4? So now you're being asked to find the number halfway between 7/11 and 3/4. So what you're going to do is take your first number, that'll be your 7/11. That'll be your A value, which would be 7/11, and since it's halfway, it'll be plus 1/2 times your B, which is your second number of 3/4, minus the 7/11. So that's what we have so far for the initial equation. Now we'll go ahead and work inside the parentheses. You'll still have 7/11 plus 1/2 on the outside. Then in the parentheses, to see the least common denominator of 4 and 11 is going to be 44, right? So that means we got to multiply the first fraction by 11 in both the numerator and denominator. You would get 33/44 minus, then you'd have to multiply the 7 and 11 by 4, so you'd have that minus 28/44. So there's what's going on in the parentheses. Now what you're going to have is 7/11 plus 1/2 times, let's see, 33 minus 28, that's 5/44, which reduces no further. So now you're down to 7/11 plus half times 5/44, which would end up equaling 7/11 plus 5/88. So you'd have 7/11 plus 5/88. Well, it looks like the least common denominator of 11 and 88 is going to be 88. So the second fraction we can leave alone. We just got to multiply both the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 8. If we do that, 7 times 8, that's 56. Out of 88. Plus, we have the 5/88, which will simply equal 61/88, and it'll reduce no further. So the answer to this problem is going to be 61/88. That's the number that's halfway between 7/11 and 3/4. So yeah, sometimes you can get big fractions. That does happen. Alright, what if, let's see, negative 4/25 and negative 9/50. So this time we're being asked to find the number halfway between negative 4/25 and negative 9/50. Well, take your A, which is your negative 4/25, so you'll have that, plus the 1/2, since it's halfway between the numbers that we're trying to find. 1/2 times your second number of negative 9/50 minus your first number of negative 4/25. Well, minus negative 4/25, that would actually be plus 4/25. That's exactly what we would get. So that's what you have going on inside the parentheses. Now let's just do the math. Let's deal with the parentheses first. So you'll have negative 4/25 plus still the 1/2. Now, the least common denominator of 25 and 50 is definitely going to be 50, is it not? So negative 9/50, we can leave that alone. However, your 4/25, you're going to have to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 2 in order to get your common denominator of 50. So that would be plus 8/50ths. So there's the breakdown in the parentheses. So now this becomes negative 4/25 plus 1/2 times negative 9 plus 8, that's negative 1. What this just became was negative 4/25 plus 1/2 times negative 1/50th, which would end up turning into negative 4/25, then minus 1/100th. Wait, minus 1/100th. So what we have now is negative 4/25 minus 1/100th. We're almost done, but it's also safe to say the least common denominator of 25 and 100 is definitely 100, right? So the first fraction, we're going to have to multiply both numerator and denominator by 4 to get that. You multiply the numerator by 4, you'll get negative 16 out of 100. Then you'll have minus 1/100th, which would simplify into negative 17/100ths, which will reduce no further. So that's your answer, is negative 17/100ths. So the number that's halfway between negative 4/25 and negative 9/50 is negative 17/100ths. That's the number that's halfway between them. All right. What could be next? All right, let's do the number halfway. Let me space this apart a little bit better so I can write a little bit better. Find the number halfway between what numbers are we doing? Negative 5 and 1/5 and positive 8 and 2/3. So now we're being asked to find the numbers halfway between negative 5 and 1/5 and positive 8 and 2/3. So what you're going to want to do, let me write in blue here, set up your equation. You'll take your first number. Well, before we take our first number, why don't we go ahead and convert these mixed fractions into improper fractions? So negative 5 and 1/5, that would be negative 26/5, right? So you'll have negative 26/5 plus 1/2 times your second number, which is 8 and 2/3. 8 and 2/3 as an improper fraction is 26/3. So you'll have 26/3 minus negative 26/5, which would actually be plus 26/5. So that's what you would have going on inside of the parentheses there. So there's your expression. There's the original equation. Now let's work inside the parentheses. You'll have your negative 26/5 plus your 1/2 times, okay, we need to come up with the least common denominator of 3 and 5. I think it's evident it's going to be 15. So you're going to have to multiply your first fraction, the numerator and denominator, both by 5. So 26 times 5, that's going to be 130. Then 3 times 5 is 15. You'll get 130 out of 15. Plus, now we have to take the second fraction, multiply both numerator and denominator by 3 to get our denominator of 15. Well, we know the denominator is going to be 15 when we multiply 5 by 3, but what about 26 times 3? That's going to be 78. So we've now got fractions with the same denominator, 15. So let's still continue to work inside the parentheses. You'll have negative 26 fifths plus 1/2 of, when you add these together, 130 plus 78, that's 208 out of 15. So that's the value in the parentheses you get, is 208 out of 15. So we're done with the parentheses, but we have half times 208 over 15. We notice between 2 and 208, there's a common factor of 2, right? Well, the 2 will cancel out. The 208, well, if you divide that by 2, you get 104. So what you'll end up with now is negative 26 fifths plus 104 over 15. That would be the number you would get now, is negative 26 fifths plus 104 over 15. Well, the least common denominator of 5 and 15 is definitely 15, is it not? So we're going to have to multiply both the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 3 in order to achieve that. So negative 26 times 3, that's negative 78 out of 15, plus then you'll have 104 out of 15, which now we just do 104 minus 78. That would end up being 26 fifteenths. You get 26 fifteenths for your improper fraction. Or you probably, since both of your original numbers were mixed numbers, you probably want to write this as a mixed number. So it would be 1 and 11 fifteenths as a mixed number. So the number that is halfway between negative 5 and 1/5 and positive 8 and 2/3 is going to be 1 and 11 fifteenths. That would be the answer you would get. All right. Just got a few more problems here and we're almost done. I know these are kind of doozies a little bit. Alright, I can tell you the next few are not going to be halfway between the numbers. So, let's prepare for that. Alright, in the next problem, we got to find the number that is 1/3. So we're going to find the number 1/3 of the way between, that's going to be between 1/6 and 4/5. Let me write that in black so you can see it better. Alright, so we are now being asked to find the number that is 1/3 of the way between 1/6 and 4/5. Well, what you're still going to do is take your A, which is that 1/6, and it always starts with plus, but since it's 1/3 of the way between the numbers that you're trying to solve, the fraction's actually going to be 1/3. It's not going to be 1/2, it's going to be 1/3. Basically, you can think of the distance they want you to find, the number they want you to find between the two numbers, that's your fraction, the 1/3. But you still take your b, your second term, which is your 4/5, minus your a, which is your 1/6. So we've set up the problem. It ends up being 1/6 plus 1/3 times 4/5 minus 1/6. So let's work in the parentheses now. You'll still have 1/6 plus 1/3 times, okay, we need to find the least common denominator of 5 and 6. That's probably going to be 30. That's going to end up being 30. So what that's going to be is you got to multiply your numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 6. If you do that, you'll get 24/30 minus, now you have to multiply the numerator and denominator of the second fraction by 5 in order to get the denominator of 30. If we do that, you'll get 5/30. So now inside the parentheses, we have fractions with the same denominator at least. So now let's continue to work inside the parentheses. You'll still have 1/6 plus, this time, 1/3 times, let's see, 24 minus 5, that's 19. That'll be 19/30. So we've at least got the single fraction in the parentheses now. Nothing cancels out, so what you're going to end up getting here is 1/6 plus 1/3 times 19/30. That would be 19/90. So now you have 1/6 plus 19/90. That's what you would end up having. Well, between 6 and 90, the least common denominator is 90. 6 goes into 90 15 times. So if you multiply the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 15, you'll have your denominator of 90. So 1 times 15 goes without saying, that's 15. Over 6 times 15 is 90. So now you have 15/90 plus 19/90. Add the two together, you'll end up getting 34/90. Which 34/90, they both have a common factor of 2 between them. So if you divide 34 by 2, you get 17. Divide 90 by 2, you get 45. So the answer you would get for the number that is 1/3 of the way between 1/6 and 4/5 would be 17/45. That number ends up being 1/3 of the way between them. I got like 3 more problems, then we're done for the day. Alright, I don't think the next one's 1/3. Let's see what they want you to do here. So we are going to find the number 1/4. This time they want you to find the number that is 1/4 of the way between two numbers. So those two numbers that they've assigned to us are going to be 5/8 and 1 1/4. So we are being asked to find the number that is 1/4 of the way between 5/8 and 1 1/4, right? So start out with your first number A, which would be your 5/8. Now plus, since they want you to find 1/4 of the way between the two numbers, your fraction's going to be 1/4 times your second number, which would be 1 1/4. I would strongly recommend we convert that 1 1/4 into an improper fraction. If we do that, we get 5/4. You'll have 5/4 and minus your first number of 5/8. So that is our initial equation that we've derived from this. Now we just need to work inside of the parentheses. So we'll still have the 5/8 plus the 1/4 times, okay, the least common denominator between 4 and 8 is definitely 8, right? So you got to multiply numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 2. If you do that, you get 10/8, then minus your 5/8. So we have that going for us now. So let's work in the parentheses some more. You'll have 5/8 plus the 1/4 times, okay, 10 minus 5, that's 5. So you'll have 1/4 times 5/8. So now you got 5/8 plus 1/4 of 5/8. So what we have to do now, nothing cancels between 1/4 and 5/8, so we just got to go straight for the multiplication. So we'll end up having 5/8 plus 1/4 times 5/8, that would be 5/32. So what you end up having is 5/8 plus 5/32. Well, the least common denominator of 8 and 32 is 32. That means we only have to multiply the numerator and denominator of the first fraction by 4. So if we do that, you'll end up getting 20/32 plus the 5/32, which, when you add them together, you'll get 25/32. And they don't reduce any further, so that is your answer. So the number that is 1/4 of the way between 5/8 and 1 1/4 is 25/32. I got 2 more problems, then we're done. See, I'm pretty sure this next one's not 1/4. I know it's not half. We already did all the half problems. Let's see. This particular one, okay, find the number 1/5. So we need to find the number that is 1/5 of the way between two numbers. Those two numbers that have been assigned to us are -2/3 and then +3/5. So we want to find the number that is 1/5 of the way between -2/3 and 3/5. So again, take your A, which is your -2/3, so we're going to do that, plus, now the number is 1/5 of the way between the two numbers, so your fraction's going to be 1/5, times your B, which is your second number, in this case is 3/5, minus your A, which is your first number. Well, minus -2/3, that actually turns out to be +2/3. So your initial equation results in -2/3 plus 1/5 times a quantity of 3/5 plus 2/3. Now let's go ahead and work inside of the parentheses here. So you'll still have -2/3 plus you'll have 1/5. Now, of course, we need to find the least common denominator of 5 and 3. That's 15. So the first fraction, we have to multiply both numerator and denominator by 3. If we went ahead and did that now, you would get 9/15. Plus, then now we have to take the second fraction, multiply both numerator and denominator by 5 to get that denominator of 15. If we do that, you'll get 10/15. So at least now in the parentheses, we have two fractions with the same common denominator. Let's go ahead and continue a step further inside the parentheses. You'll end up having -2/3 plus the 1/5 times, now 9 plus 10, that's 19. You'll end up getting 19/15. Well, between the 1/5 and the 19/15, nothing cancels out, so we have to go straight for the multiplication. This will result here now in negative 2/3 plus 19/75. So we're going to have negative 2/3 plus 19/75. And the least common denominator of 3 and 75 is going to be 75. So that means we only have to deal with the first fraction with multiplying. We have to multiply both numerator and denominator by 25, excuse me, to get that denominator of 75. If we do that, negative 2 times 25, that's going to be negative 50/75 plus your 19/75. So, now it's a simple matter of adding negative 50 and 19. You'll end up getting negative 31/75. That would be your answer, would be negative 31/75. That number is 1/5 of the way between negative 2/3 and 3/5. Negative 31/75. I got one more problem. Just one more. And then we're done for the day. All right. This one, let's find the number 3/4. 3/4. So we're going to find a number 3/4 of the way. Whoops, fourths has a U, doesn't it? This is why I'm not an English teacher. Fourths. Alright, so find the number 3/4 of the way between, what are those two numbers? 1/2 and 8/9. So we are being asked to find the number that is 3/4 of the way between 1/2 and 8/9. So start out again with your original number A, which would be your 1/2. So 1/2 plus, they want the number that's 3/4 of the way between those two numbers. So your fraction's actually going to be 3/4 times your B, which is your 8/9, your second number, minus your A, which is 1/2, your first number. So there's your initial equation. You get 1/2 plus 3/4 times the quantity of 8/9 minus 1/2. Okay, well, let's work inside the parentheses here first. So you'll have 1/2 plus 3/4 times, okay, we need to find a least common denominator between 9 and 2. That's going to be 18. So in order to turn the first fraction into a denominator of 18, we need to multiply both numerator and denominator by 2. If we do that, we'll get 16/18 minus, okay, what you're going to have now is you'll end up having 1/2. You got to multiply both numerator and denominator by 9 in order to get that denominator of 18. If you do that, you get 9/18. So now we at least have a fraction with the same denominator. Both fractions have the same denominator. So let's work inside the parentheses some more. You'll have 1/2 plus 3/4 times, all right, 16 minus 9, that's 7. So we have 3/4 times 7/18. Well, isn't it true that between the 3 and the 18, they both have a common factor of 3? So that'll go to 1, that'll go to 6. So what you're really going to have now is 1/2 plus 1/4 times 7/6. So you have 1/2 plus 1/4 times 7/6. Well, we can't cancel 1/4 and 7/6 any further, so all that's left to do is go for the multiplication. You'll end up getting 1/2 plus 7/24. Well, now we have to find the least common denominator between 2 and 24. That's definitely 24. So we only have to deal with multiplying the first fraction, which means you got to multiply both numerator and denominator by 12 to get that same common denominator of 24. So if we do that, you'll get 12/24 plus 7/24, which then now you just add them together, you'll get 19/24, which reduces no further, so that your answer is 19/24. That would be the number that is 3/4 of the way between 1/2 and 8/9. That's 19/24. So basically what you're going to do, if you're asked to find a number halfway between two numbers, or 1/3 of the way between two numbers, 3/4 of the way, what have you, you're always going to start with your first number that you're given, which is your A in the formula, plus your fraction won't always be 1/2. That would only apply if they want you to find the number halfway between two numbers. If they want you to find this one, like 3/4 of the way between the numbers, your fraction would be 3/4. They want you to find 1/5 of the way, your fraction will be 1/5. So far it's A, your first number, plus however the distance they want you to find for your fraction, times your second number minus your first number. And that's all there is to it. So I know this lesson was a bit odd, but it's a good one because these problems can really stump you, especially when you're dealing with fractions. If you had whole numbers, it might be a little more obvious, but when you're dealing with fractions, it's not as obvious, so that's why this is important. So now, next lesson, we're going to kind of review a lesson from pre-algebra about how to convert repeating decimals into a fraction. How do we do that? So I hope everyone has a good night. Take care.